Good noon. So here we are. I'm Debra Loder, dietitian and dietary manager here at Wickenburg Community Hospital, and we are coming to you today to talk a little bit about the gluten-free craze that's going on around us. I had to take off my mask, so I have wings because we're now wearing masks here at the hospital to keep everyone safe, and it tends to make my hair a mess. So instead of bed head, I call it mask head. So just bear with us. Once again, I'm not used to doing this, but we're going to get better as time goes by. So, gluten-free foods are everywhere. The market for gluten-free foods has grown from about $464 million in 2011 to a projected $2.4 billion this year. That's a lot of people eating a lot of gluten-free food. Unfortunately, what happens is a gluten-free diet is sometimes translated to be a grain-free diet, which can fuel the belief that all grains are bad for you. And if you've ever been to my classes, I always talk about whole grains and how good they are for us. So let's get to the gluten. What is gluten? Gluten is a general name for the proteins that are found in wheat, rye, barley, and triticale, which is a cross between wheat and rye. Gluten is what helps foods maintain their shape. It kind of acts as a glue that holds the food together. It can be found in many types of foods, even ones that we wouldn't expect it to be in. It can be found in medicines and even some vitamin supplements. When I was younger, my mom made a lot of homemade bread, and she often added gluten powder to the bread to make it have a better texture. So now we wouldn't probably do that very often. Gluten is in all forms of wheat, including wheatberry, durum wheat, semolina, spelt, farina, farro. Those are all different types of wheat, and so you have to really understand that when you're reading a label to make sure it is wheat-free or gluten-free. So who really needs to avoid gluten? People who have been diagnosed with celiac disease must avoid all gluten-containing foods. Celiac disease is an autoimmune disease that affects the small intestine. Part of the small intestines are damaged by an immune reaction to the gluten. So when you eat that gluten, your intestine responds in an immune reaction, trying to get rid of it. And those damaged sections of the intestine no longer absorb nutrients, which can lead to weight loss, malnutrition, and other diseases. Just like a lot of immune diseases, celiac disease, the symptoms of it vary widely, but they include things like abdominal pain, bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, nausea and vomiting, and reduced appetite. So the symptoms really can affect how you eat, how well you eat, and how much is going to be absorbed by your body. Today, there's no cure for the disease, but people who have celiac disease can lead a very normal and healthful life, but they do have to eliminate all traces of gluten from their diets. Celiac disease can also affect the skin and other tissues. In addition to celiac disease, there is a condition called non-celiac gluten sensitivity. This can cause the same symptoms as celiac disease, but without damaging the intestine. So you could still have the diarrhea, the nausea, the vomiting, all of those bloating, abdominal pain, things like that. But in this case, the intestine isn't damaged. For the vast majority of healthy people, gluten has not been proven to have any negative effects on health. And I know that a lot of people are avoiding gluten for health reasons, but at this point, there's nothing proven that would cause people to have negative effects if they're generally healthy and don't have one of these other conditions. But some people who have irritable, irritable bowel syndrome have an intolerance to what's called the fructans in wheat. It's not the gluten, it's something called fructans, and they cause the same kind of symptoms as people who have celiac disease, but it's really not the gluten, it's the fructans in the wheat. And then there are some people who have a wheat allergy. There's an allergy to wheat that's not an allergy to the protein necessarily, but to the wheat in general. It's estimated that about 5.5% to 1.7% of the population have celiac disease, and more than that, about 0.6 to 10.6% have the non-celiac gluten sensitivity. But even with these numbers, it's probably impossible that everyone who purchases gluten-free products has one of these conditions. Alicia Romano, who is a spokesperson for the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, said, quote, "I certainly see the gluten-free trend as the springboard for the grain-free trend. And it has not only been further catapulted by the paleo and ketogenic diet trends. There is clearly no established reason for anyone to avoid all grains," end quote. And in fact, avoiding all grains can be detrimental to health. Removing all grains from the diet, both refined and not refined, results in the elimination or reduction of several nutrients, including the B vitamins, which are thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, and folate, as well as iron, magnesium, zinc, and selenium. And we know that folate is very important for pregnant women to have in their diet, so that would be a reason that someone who is pregnant might want to think about going gluten-free. In addition, removing all grains from the diet removes the richest source of dietary fiber. And, as I've said a lot of times, phytochemicals. Those phytochemicals are phytonutrients that are so important to our health. Very few of the gluten-free products that are made specifically to be gluten-free are fortified or enriched with the vitamins and minerals that are found in gluten-containing grain products. So we have these refined products. So I'll just say white bread, for example. It's made out of white flour, which the bran and the germ have been removed from. So it's just a white flour. But then they put back in some things like thiamine and biotin and folate. And so that's why it's enriched. So think about that, and then think about the fact that some of the gluten-free products are not enriched with that. So people with celiac disease have to avoid every bit of gluten from their diet, and it can be very, very difficult. In some foods, it's obvious that they would have gluten. So those would be, like I said before, wheat in all forms, barley in all forms, rye, things like pasta, flour, beer, couscous, cakes, cookies, croutons, flour tortillas. All of those things, it's pretty obvious that there would be gluten in those. But it's really important to read labels because there are also hidden sources of gluten. And those include modified food starch, soy sauce, some cosmetics, some medications, malt, brewer's yeast, and dextrin. So if you do have celiac disease or the non-celiac condition, you really have to read labels to make sure that these items are not in it. That's why someone who has to follow a gluten-free diet should check in with a registered dietitian to make sure that they are looking for all types of gluten in their diet. When we're talking about gluten and grains, we often talk about oats. So oats are inherently gluten-free, but they're typically grown and processed in close proximity to wheat, which means that they can become contaminated. So traditionally, we have said for gluten-free people to not eat oats. However, these days there are a number of growers and manufacturers who are producing certified gluten-free oats. But you have to look at that label just to make sure that it does say gluten-free. So foods that are safe for people with celiac disease include soy products, fruit, vegetables, meat, of course, nuts, beans, seeds, as well as some other grains. And those are amaranth, quinoa, rice, and buckwheat. After we're finished with this presentation today, we'll be uploading to our website, Wickenburg Community Hospital website, this handout that talks about 6 gluten-free ancient grains. It's got a lot of really fun information in it, so we'll upload it so that you can print that out if you'd like to and investigate some of those grains. There's some evidence that going gluten-free may actually raise your risk for type 2 diabetes. According to Dr. Jen Kong from Harvard University, gluten-free foods can be less nutritious because they lack the dietary fiber that we talked about before, as well as the vitamins and minerals. Fiber is known to be protective in the development of of type 2 diabetes. So fiber is one of the things that we always recommend when someone has diabetes, to make sure that you have enough fiber in your diet to help reduce your blood glucose. And so if you're not eating fiber by eating a lot of the gluten-free products, then you can have a higher risk for diabetes. So to me, the bottom line is, if you don't need to follow a gluten-free diet, then don't follow it. It's important that you include high fiber whole grains in your daily diet, and the dietary guidelines for Americans advise that we have 20 to 25 grams of dietary fiber per day for women and 35 to 38 grams a day for men. And you know, fiber is not only important for people who have diabetes, but it helps to reduce your blood cholesterol. It helps with all your blood lipids. It helps to lose weight, because when we fill up on high fiber foods, we know that we stay satiated a little bit longer. So it's really important to have fiber in our diet, and since a lot of the gluten-free items don't have a lot of fiber, it's really important that you, if you have to follow that diet, that you get your fiber from fruits and vegetables. So here are some interesting facts that I found about celiac disease and gluten. 1 in 133 Americans has celiac disease, and it's estimated that 3 million Americans across all races, ages, and genders suffer from celiac disease. This is really disheartening, I think. The average time a person waits to be correctly diagnosed with celiac disease can be 6 to 10 years. So it's really a hard thing to diagnose. It can lead to a number of other disorders like infertility, reduced bone density, neurological disorders, some cancers, and some other autoimmune diseases. There are no pharmaceutical cures for celiac disease. The only thing that is effective treatment for celiac disease is a 100% gluten-free diet. And so one of the pros of going gluten-free, if you want to have a pro, it's a good way to try some of the other grains like corn, quinoa, and different varieties of rice. In fact, there are several varieties of rice out there. There's black rice, red rice, and wild rice that are kind of fun to experiment with. And the other pro is that giving up gluten and wheat might mean giving up refined wheat choices like croissants and cookies and white bread and cakes. So that could be a good thing for your health. Gluten-free foods are usually double to triple the cost. And many gluten-free products are still high in sugar and sodium and fat. So I have a few items here on the table today. They are very expensive, and so I didn't bring the grocery store receipt with me. I was going to do that, but I didn't. This is a gluten-free bagel, and when I look at the label, it has only 1 gram of dietary fiber. So a typical whole wheat bagel would have about 3 or 4 grams. When I look at the list of ingredients, I don't find the addition of any of the B vitamins or anything like that. As a matter of fact, it shows on the label that it has 0% of the dietary guidelines for vitamin D. It has only 8% of the recommendation for calcium, and only 6% of the recommendation for iron, and 2% of the of what is recommended for potassium. So that's in the bagel. In the bread, this bread has dietary fiber 1 gram. So that's only 1 gram of dietary fiber for a slice. When you eat a slice of whole wheat bread or whole grain bread, it's about 3 grams of fiber in that. So lots more in the one with gluten. And then these are just some crackers, and this brand has, or this variety has 1 gram of dietary fiber per 14 crackers. And then this one has 0 grams of dietary fiber. So there's the reason to have regular whole grain crackers and whole grain bread, whole wheat bread. Of course, if you have to follow, if you have celiac disease and you have to follow a gluten-free diet, then we need to work on that. And like I said, that's where a registered dietitian can really be helpful to you. Along with the grains handout that will be on the website, I will put these handouts on as well. This one is, can lack of gluten raise your diabetes risk? So if you want more information on that, be sure to get this handout. And then just a couple of others that are about gluten sensitivity and how you manage that, and then one that's about gluten and celiac disease. So I hope that you enjoyed this today. I don't know if there are any questions for me, Monique? No questions? Okay, well, if you do have a question, be sure to give me a call here at the hospital. And once again, if you need help with a gluten-free diet or just want to talk about it, I'm available by appointment through our clinic, and I believe my phone number is 928-668-1811. Okay, is that it? Monique's telling me it is. And also, we will have another presentation. Monique's going to let us know on Facebook, but I think it's toward the end of the month, like the 28th or 29th. Mm-hmm. And so be sure to tune into that. We're going to talk a little bit about making meals out of the pantry, because right now what's going on in our world, a lot of people are buying a lot of pantry staples, and after this is all over, we'll probably all have a lot of leftovers that we'll need to use up. So we'll talk about meals using pantry staples as well as portion sizes. So that will be a more hands-on